Hello, everybody. Welcome back into the LFC Transfer Room. I am Jack, delighted to be alongside Kev, Jay, and Charlie for a stream here today discussing some rumors, some things that have happened, that might happen, that might not happen. Kev, first of all, how are you doing today, my friend?
All good, mate. All very good. And happy Independence to you, Jack.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure that I'm the only one here who celebrates that, but lovely day off for the 4th of July. So thank you, Kev. Charlie, yourself?
Yeah, really good, mate. Really good.
Jay?
All good, mate. Echo Kev's sentiments. Enjoy, mate. I know it's a big day for you.
It is indeed. A lot of big things happening recently. Was yesterday Soboslai? It feels like it was
Sunday. It was
Sunday.
Wasn't it?
I have no concept of time anymore, but big signing then. Really excited to see him come into the club. How many? I should have asked this before the stream. Not sure if you all have given your thoughts on the signing already, but I think we might as well just get it kick-started there. Kev, I mean, kind of your thoughts. You know, big signing, a lot of money there thrown at him. How are you feeling?
Over the moon, mate. I'll be honest. When it started coming out on Thursday, that there was a release clause and it was up by Friday. I was expecting us not to be involved in the race, but to us to actually sign, seal, deliver him, and he's ours. I'm over the moon, mate. You can't, my expectations when they're high going into the weekend, but coming out of it, I'm ecstatic, mate. I'm over the moon. He offers that more creativity in our midfield. He provides, as I've said before, he provides an alternative when Salah goes to the AFCON, who can play on that right side of the midfield and can slot in without us worrying if he can meet up to the Salah standards. But it's a quality signing. He gets his head down, joins us. Happy days, mate. I'm really over the moon with it, to be honest.
Before we jump in for Charlie's thoughts, Jen, support appreciated as always. Thank you very much for the £10. Charlie, I mean, Soboslai for you. Kind of, I can't imagine there's gonna be many bad thoughts here, so it's a lot of just kind of positivity for you signing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's given me a few days to practice pronouncing his name. So Soboslai, there we go, got it right first time. But yeah, absolutely, out of the blue, this is like prime Liverpool type signing where we don't know, we haven't got a clue about any type of signing that's coming in other than the ones that are being leaked and our infamous ITKs that are on Twitter and kind of spouting XYZ, or you got the Sky Sports guys telling us that we ain't got any cash. But in terms of the player, I cannot wait to see what he's all about. Let's kind of get him in. He's got number 8 on the back of his shirt. That's like massive endorsement of his abilities, isn't it, as well? The confidence of the lad to come in and what he's already kind of said about what he wants to achieve with the club today. He even come out and said something along the lines, Champions League is not important. He can sacrifice that for a year. He wants to win the Europa League. That's the kind of stuff that you want to be hearing when you get new signings coming in. Not, they're after the cash, they're after Champions League. I think he's just got that mentality that kind of would thrive under Klopp. So yeah, really fantastic signing. Happy.
Indeed. And you mentioned the number 8, Jay. I know you're devastated to see the old number 8 heading out, but kind of your thoughts on Soboslai coming in.
Maybe because the signed Lee Cattermole and I'd have been happier than Naby Keita. My one made up, mate. Sort of come out of the blue, and obviously weren't a player we were expecting, but the signing of him has made me excited for the season, to be honest. Good to have a midfielder who can get goals. It's something we've lacked for forever. I can't remember a midfielder who used to get goals for us other than Stevie. So having McAllister with that, and it's not all on Salah to be getting goals. Obviously, I expect a lot more than Núñez this season goal-wise, but it's good to know the midfielders can chip in this season as well. And everything that he said's been boss as well about you'll miss the Champions League for 1 year, stuff like that. Like, you love to hear shit like that with a new player coming in. So, yeah, buzzing, mate, and number 8 who deserves it.
Yeah, the exact quote, we'll give it to you. As soon as I heard that it was a serious matter, I didn't think about the Champions League. I would gladly sacrifice a year. Instead, I will try to win the Europa League with Liverpool because that is the goal. Great. He's hitting all the right things, saying all the right things. It is going to be nice, to get a fresh body in there. So, but as is with this club and transfers, you get a big positive, big step forward. I don't want to call it a step back necessarily, but a bit more downer news today and interesting news to discuss. So Szoboszlai, massive positive, but he's done. The dopamine rush there is over. We need to get a new player signed so we get some more dopamine.
We need like a sliding scale of emotions on
yes.
here. Can we get someone to develop it over the next few months?
That would be nice. And can actively read our heart rate, so it just does it itself. Yeah, it just updates automatically. So David Ornstein reporting that Khephren Thuram no longer viewed as a target because of the signing of Dominic Szoboszlai in that right center mid, right 8, 10, whatever you want to call it, spot. Kev, I'll kind of toss it to you first. Turam was linked for quite a while, and it's not like it's over and done with. But it's looking much less likely than it was even like 5 days ago. For you to kind of move away from him because of Szoboszlai, how do you feel about that, I guess?
Bit mixed, to be honest. I thought dealing with Nice was going to be hard anyway, with Ratcliffe going after the ownership for United. So any kind of deal was always going to be a little bit hard to get to get through and as quickly as we want it. In that time, we've managed to go and speak to another target on our list and managed to get him in through the door, and it now looks as though we have changed our mind on him. I'm open it's the fact that it's Nice not wanting to get rid of, wanting to keep hold of him, and I wouldn't mind going back in for him next season, possibly as and leave him at the last thing I want to see is I don't want to see Turam going to someone else and then me harbouring for what he's done away and be a bit fuming with myself that we have, and a bit frustrated that we've put all the hard work in and then we just walked away at the last minute for whatever reason. I'm just mixed. To be honest, I have my heart set on Turam. I think he could do. And it was more about his physicality, the size of him. He's 6'4". He's a monster. And to have that kind of physicality, that's probably similar to our equivalent of having a Patrick Vieira in there. I'm nowhere putting him in the same line as Patrick Vieira, but to have that kind of demeanour about you in that middle of that part, which is, it would say a lot, especially when all our players that we brought in are over 6 foot already. So for me, I'm a bit downhearted that we haven't got him, but I'm hoping it's Nice just wanting to keep hold of the player, and I think it's affecting them anyway, trying to bring players in because of what's going on with Ratcliffe. So until that's sorted, which I can't see being sorted before the end of this window, maybe go into see how things are in January if we need to. But it's a shame really for me.
It is. It's tough to imagine the fit. For me, I'll kind of jump in with my thoughts before I go to you, Charlie. You think about the money that we're going to spend. You can't imagine we're going to be throwing massive wads of cash, knowing FSG historically. So considering those constraints, you put aside your thoughts on FSG, and should they spend more, just the realistic, they probably won't spend that much. It makes sense not to sign 2 right-sided center mids when you maybe could sign a defensive mid. We'll talk about Romeo Lavia in a little bit as well, but it's a weird one. I do think he would be such a unique profile that to miss out on him, it hits me a lot with Bruno Guimaraes for Newcastle, because we were linked for him, but we wanted to wait for Tchouaméni, and then now we've had to watch him play for Newcastle this past 2 seasons or whatever, and that's been tough to watch him really kind of kick it on. So I would hate for us to kind of have a similar, especially if he goes to Newcastle or somebody in the Prem. That would really suck. Charlie, though, your thoughts on, I don't want to call it the prioritization of Szoboszlai over Turam, but because we signed Szoboszlai, now cooling off our interest in Turam.
Yeah, well, I think it's an interesting one with Szoboszlai transfer, because, and this kind of links into a video that's coming out on a channel with Mo Chatra, isn't he? So he's going to be talking around about the transfer. So please give a watch. That's going to be a fantastic watch. But the third party aspect in terms of the transfer and how the finances were made up for it. So essentially, the way that I understand it, hopefully Mo will kind of explain that in the video, is we actually haven't paid for anything this year. This will kind of be offset for next season. So essentially, it's a zero outgoing for this season. So whatever budget that we had, there's still money available for the extra signing, or the signings that we do still want to go for. So yeah, I think the finances will take care of themselves. I think it's just an appetite for the club on whether they actually want to get involved with Nice and their antics. So if you look at the Szoboszlai kind of transfer, that just came out the blue on a Thursday morning, took us all by surprise. We didn't know, and then by Sunday, he's pictured, coming out the people carrier, and the signings, the paperwork, the announcement, whatnot. That's all done within 3 days. This is kind of very much a situation of Nice trying to gather more interest. They're throwing his name out at everyone, but no one is kind of biting. PSG were linked at the start, weren't they? I'm sure they were, and that kind of just died. Now they're going. Newcastle was mentioned just last week when we signed Szoboszlai. That hasn't really gone anywhere. This is just kind of like my hope. I think it's just a case of they're just throwing out names just to try to get someone to bite so they can get a little bit more cash.
Indeed. Excuse me, but great timing for me there. Jay, your thoughts? My voice is completely gone. Your thoughts on the signing?
I'll save you, mate. It's one of them. I'm made up with Szoboszlai, but I find it strange that the reports say that he's an alternative, or they've chosen him over Turam, because they're completely different profile of player. So that's the one thing I find odd. And I'm completely with Kev, because I love them signing a McAllister and Szoboszlai, but neither of them are really known for legs and physicality, an engine on the pitch, and I think that's what Turam would give us, and I do think that's what we need. Kind of similar to Declan Rice, where he's going to be at Arsenal. I know he plays more the pivot, but he's up and down the pitch all game. And I think Turam would have been that for us. But it's one of them. It's English journals that are saying this, and they haven't had the best window other than David Ornstein. I think he's the only one who can really hold his head up and say, yeah, I've called stuff right, because the rest of them have been a mess. So I wouldn't say we're definitely out of it. But look, I'm with Kev. I'm disappointed if we are out of it. But I think the one positive to take is we're not out of it because we can't afford them. We're out of it because we've chosen another player. If we were out of it because, oh, look, we've got no money, that's it, then I'd be pissed off. I'd be really annoyed with it, especially after all the legwork we've put in. And I would hate to see him at another Premier League club like Newcastle. But with them saying they're looking at Lavia over him, it's not as if we're not getting someone. We've just chose someone else. So that softens it for me personally. It's not as bad as if we were getting no one.
Definitely is that case for me as well, where, there are different profiles, different players. I think that could they coexist in an 11, though? I'm not 100%. Like, you could put Turam at defensive mid, and he would be good. I'm sure he would. I mean, he's got a lot of qualities that would let him excel there. But I just don't know if that's the best fit for him. You kind of
I think you'd lose a lot.
Yeah,
you'd lose a lot with him as a 6. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I agree. And so at that point, Kev mentioned it, the issues with Nice, their ownership, and just are they going to drag that negotiation on? Now Szoboszlai has an entire preseason. He's got a lot of time to bed in, a lot of time to get comfortable. So I think that there's a big reason for that to happen there. And maybe in an ideal world, player v player, and it was just cost and player and no other factors, maybe Turam would have been preferred or still signed. I'm not 100% sure, though. It feels like it's unlikely, but we'll see. And a big reason why it's unlikely is because, as Jay kind of alluded to, other signings, Szoboszlai was the direct like for like, and Liverpool are still heavily linked with Romeo Lavia of Southampton. It's a really interesting one. Really young guy, would be homegrown, fits the squad in terms of a registration perspective. He plays a 6. He could push Fabinho as a starter, not necessarily signed as an outright replacement, but a lot of things to like. Charlie, I'll toss it to you first on Lavia, just to get your thoughts. Kind of when you look at him, we'll avoid kind of Turam versus Lavia as a discussion point. Let's look at him as in isolation. When you view him as a signing, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think just essentially kind of reiterating what's already been said, they're very, very different players. I know we don't want to do a comparison between Turam and Lavia, but there is that distinct factor. Lavia isn't the number 6 that we think people think he is, if that makes sense. He's not that anchor man that will sit in front of a back 4 and destroy kind of attacks. I don't believe that's what he's like. I haven't seen that enough in his Southampton days to suggest that he would be the absolute ultimate number 6 for us. Whether he be that box to box kind of floating around doing a Kante, Caicedo type breakdown of attacks, that's more his style. That's the way I see it. So it's an interesting one. Profile, yeah, it does. He does fit, doesn't he, because of his age and whatnot. But he isn't. He isn't for me the ultimatum to Ram. What he would bring to the side would be energy. He would be able to kind of fit in terms of what we're trying to do in that midfield. However, still a little bit hesitant about what he'd actually do for us going forward. Again, I know we're trying to avoid that comparison with Turam, but Turam would scare.
If you want to, compare him if you want to.
Yeah, no, but Turam, like, he scares me. He scares me, and just thinking about what he would do running through midfield, running through other opposition players. And this is the thing: what we had, a few years ago, we had a midfield where every team knew they were going to be in for an absolute dog of a day. Last season, they kind of everyone pretty much battered us and bullied us around. If we had Turam and Lavia, if he was able to come in, Soberslide, McAllister, that's a midfield that's going to scare opposition. You put Trent in that as well. So I don't know if I actually answered your question, mate. I think he'd be a good player, but I don't know if he's worth the hassle or putting it over Turam.
And about £50 million is what the rumored figure is as well, Charlie. I imagine that doesn't add that to your.
No, I don't think he is. I think the leverage would be with the club to say, well, he's 40 million clause next season.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much difference between what he's going to be doing this season, next season. He's going to be championship next season, so kind of like take it or leave it.
If you want some insight on the channel, there is an expert interview with Saints Rob. His name's Rob. His Saints Rob. His first name is Saints. Anyways, good insight into him. Great interview, great guy. And so there's some good insight there on the channel. So go check that out after the stream if you want to learn a bit more about him. Jay, for you on Lavia, kind of profile as an individual player, I'm interested in kind of your thoughts on him.
I do really like the lad, but I think 50 million for a kid who's had one season for Southampton's a bit mad, and I don't see him coming straight in the starting 11. So that's the only thing that I think's a bit weird. That we've gone from Turam, who sounds like he's cheaper, I think probably would start, to a kid that probably won't and costs more. Don't get me wrong, long term, he's got the potential to be Fabinho, maybe even better, but he's not now. And we're not a club who can go and spend 50 million and put it on a bench early. So that's the only thing I find a bit weird with it. I do like the kid. I don't dislike him whatsoever. Just a bit weird in the thinking, I think.
So for you, Jay, then are you prioritizing Turam versus him? Are you looking at a 6 that could push Fabinho out of the spot? What are you doing with that money for you?
See, for me, I know Fabinho struggled last season, but you can say that about any player in that team. Van Dijk's just as culpable as any player last season as putting in poor performances. Tail end of the season, last 10 games, Fabinho was near to back to his best. He weren't his very best, but he was more or less there. If he can play like that again, you're talking about still having one of the best 6s in the world. So you've got Bezetic there, who I know some of the lads in the chat have said as well, they see his future maybe being as an 8 because he did play really well there. So if not, you've got Bezetic there as a 6, which, to be honest, if we sign Lavia, that kind of answers the question. Bezetic isn't going to be a holding midfielder, because by signing Lavia, you're holding Bezetic back.
Yeah.
So Bezetic is clearly going to end up playing in the 8, in the centre midfield rather than holding. So if that's the case, then yeah, it makes sense to do that, because he will get game time. If not, then I wouldn't do it. If you're going to make Bezetic be a holding midfielder, I wouldn't bother, because you're just going to hinder his development. And I think there's a real player there with Bezetic.
Indeed. Kev, for you on Lavia and kind of just the balance of, was more on in terms of outgoings that we'll discuss in a little bit, but for him, where do you kind of fall on the sign, don't sign spectrum?
I'm with the lads. it's a tall one. But if you're looking at what we're doing, we bought a 10, we bought an 8, and we're now looking for the 6. So it kind of says that we are looking at that sense of as that number 6, and especially on the right hand side. I think Lavia is probably looking as the engine and the cover for potentially Trent when he moves into midfield, and to have that kind of person in there doing that kind of role, than probably Besic, which is what Jay's quite rightly said. A few people think he will be an 8, and if we are signing him, I agree with him that he will be that in that number 6 role. So you're bringing him in for the legs and the cover for Trent when he moves into midfield, which is missing sadly last season, because you look at the likes of Elliott who worked in there. It's not his position, and we've played round pegs and square holes, and it just doesn't work. He's good at intercepting, he's good at blocking, he's good at tackling. So if you look at those stats that he done for last season, that's where I'm thinking he's not my first choice. But if Klopp wants him, I can see why he wants that. With the tackles, interceptions, and blocks, there's your cover for Trent, and there's your engine to get us back and try and cover that weakness that we have on the right hand side when he does move in there, and saves Kanate coming over as much as what he has to. You've got someone in the engine room being able to do that from the midfield sense, then it frees up everyone else, and everyone can relax a bit. Whereas last season we were all on centre hooks when the ball got played over on that side, and I have palpitations on the left hand side when Timika's plays, but it goes even worse last season when you see the how it was going through us. So for me, the money's an issue, but we know why that's the case. There's a 20% release clause to Man City. So, Southampton want to try and make a bit of money out of it, which I don't blame them to do. They've got a potentially high ceiling of a young player on their hands who is too good for the championship. So, they're going to ask for as much as they want. So, but I agree. I can't disagree with what the lad said, but I'm trying to look at as to how he would fit in and where I would see him playing in the team if he was playing. And that's the only thing I can see basically he'd give us that we didn't have last season for me.
It's an interesting one because, again, could he displace Fabinho? Could he walk in? There is a lot of question marks. I do think to almost speak in favor of the transfer a little bit, because not that I think if we signed him, I think there'd be a lot of belief in him as a player. There are, I think, better options in certain aspects to consider for sure. But people have been kind of claiming that, Caicedo is rumored around 80 million to 100 million. That's just, 30 million pounds is a lot of money. But it's saying just bump it up to a Tchouaméni or a Caicedo or some other higher tier defensive midfielder with the cash to make that signing. I don't think that makes sense, especially in a wage perspective. He's going to come in and be a really low earner wage-wise. That's clearly an important emphasis for the club. So I think financially it could be doable. I don't believe they would need all the money up front, so we could go back to doing installments, which is helpful considering that we had to pay the Soboslai deal all up front. So it's interesting in a lot of senses there. Let's talk about the outgoings now. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that came out in the last 24, 48 hours. We can run wild with this. So Steven Gerrard won't he go to Saudi Arabia. He's now going to El Ettifaq.
Yeah, that's it.
My pronunciation is going to be brutal. Steven Gerrard's club is what it's called now in my book. Ambitiously targeting Jordan Henderson as a big name signing, according to Chris Wheeler. Kind of an absurd bit of a rumor. The idea of him leaving is one that I imagine a lot of fans last year would have been like cool with, because he had some poor performances last year. But to go to Saudi Arabia would be quite crazy. Kev, I'm going to swing it to you first on the outgoing sense. Let's start with do you think Henderson would leave? I think let's get that out of the way as a group. Talk about that. Do you think there is a proposal that Saudi Arabia could make that could convince him that is where the last few years of his career, maybe even the next 1-2 years of his career, are played?
I would like to think that there's part of him that goes, you know what? If Stevie G comes and offers 40 mil for me, I'll go and take it and, give Liverpool a bit more finances. Not going to happen. He's not that type of player. And I'm not going to steal what Charlie said beforehand, so I'll leave him to come up with that one because it was a good point he made. So I'll leave that part of it, me answer out. And I totally agree with it. I just see him wanting to finish his career in the Premier League. I don't see him wanting to go anywhere else. He has no aspirations to go anywhere else. He's won everything. The money is never an object with him. You look how much of a leader he is in within the squad. I think Klopp wouldn't want him to go because he's already lost a leader in Milner. So he still wants that kind of part of him to be there. I just don't see him even going to. Even if Steven Gerrard was to ask him, I still think he'll turn around and say no because of the player, and for not only for the player he is, but also the man he is as well on and off the pitch. So I just don't see it myself.
Charlie, for you on Henderson. Before actually I jump to you, like the video. If you're watching right now, like it. Subscribe to the page. If you're not subscribed to the page, Charlie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the point I made before the stream went up was this really kind of depends on Jordan's aspirations with England. So the Euros are next year, aren't they? So if he's got aspirations, if he thinks that he can still partake in an England squad, maybe not start, but he'll be able to go in and add to the squad itself, harmony, or still play a few minutes here and there. Is he going to be able to get in the squad, be chosen by Southgate, who's been very, very vocal about players that don't play within England, and do that while playing in Saudi Arabia? I don't think he would. I totally agree, 100% agree with Kev about the man. Him and his personality. I don't think that would allow him to be able to move to Saudi Arabia because of the ethics, what he actually kind of campaigns for, and that kind of goes against some of the human rights issues that occur in that region of the world. So yeah, there's a few things. Personally, I would be really hesitant to see him leave the club at this point in time. He should be filling that Milner role. Though Milner played a little bit too much last season, he could definitely fill that role of coming in, shoring up the last 10-15 minutes if we've got a 1-0 or if we're kind of just holding out for certain results and whatnot. But he can come in, chase the ball, get everyone kind of calm, collected, see through the result and do it that way. But yeah, I'm not too sure if that's the right step for Jordan.
It really is an interesting one. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on Jordan Henderson. Should he leave? Do you think he'll leave? What would it take for him to leave? Jay, those same questions to you on him for Henderson. Do you see it, and would you want it to happen if the proposal was close and you're almost making a pitch of Jordan, like, all right, Jordan, time to pack your bags, buddy, or here's why you should stay?
Look, Henderson gets a load of shit online, a lot of people aren't into him, but you've got to remember he has given everything for us and he has won everything with us, and as far as I know, he's the only captain to won every single trophy with us. So he does deserve respect on his name, albeit I don't want him starting week in, week out by any means. Should only be Europa League now for me and cameo sub-appearances. But that still doesn't mean it should be get out and all this shite that you see online. That does me head in, to be honest. It's not really what we're about. But no, I don't think Henderson would ever go to Saudi Arabia. Completely what Kev said. He's too... I was trying to word this in the chat the other day and I couldn't think of the word, so I just didn't say it. He's like too prim and proper.
Principled, isn't he? He's got principles.
Yeah, Charlie, that's the one.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he's too principled, mate. He's not one of them he'd rather retire at Sunderland in a championship or even what Milner's doing now at Brighton than go over there and get 50 million a year, whatever stupid stuff they're offering. That's not who he is. It's not in his character. I think the other thing we're saying is if this is a rebuild season and we get 3 new midfielders and a centre half, you do not want your leader of the dressing room leaving. 2 of them, in fact, when there's a brand new rebuild. Because what you need when you've got new players coming in, particularly young ones, is the standards and the benchmark needs to be set by people like Henderson. So if one of these new lads come in, not that I'm saying any of them would, but if any of them come in and they're not at it in training, that's where your Enzos and your Milners are there to say, look, this is the standard, this is what you do week in, week out. So I don't think people appreciate how important that is in a dressing room. So you can give him as much crap as you want. He's still very important to this squad.
I've got 2 points on that, and I 100% agree. So the first one is, and this isn't a dig at Virgil. Virgil's very quiet. He's very reserved as an individual. If you remember back when we were playing in lockdown and we were playing the games on TV, you could hear Hendo just screaming at everyone and kicking everyone's arse up and making sure they're doing the right things. You don't get that from them. Verge is absolutely world class, but he's not the vocal captain like Millie or like Hendo. What Klopp needs is someone who's quite vocal, especially when we've got new players, and it looks like it's going to be, a few of them that are going to be playing into the first 11 in due course. But he needs that type of manager on the pitch as well, and that's what Hendo does. I know there's certain things that he doesn't do quite right, but you need to have that kind of general on the pitch. So we need to kind of think, if we're losing that leader in the dressing room and on the pitch, who is it that will replace him? You got to think about that.
It's really hard. I mean, who would be the captain? Trent?
Well, it would be Verge. I said in the chat. Yeah, I said in the chat, Alisson would be brilliant as captain. I know, kind of a bit tongue in cheek because what he did to swerve 2 red cards in the game, but by the by, I think Alisson would be a fantastic captain.
It is hard to imagine it, though. And you mentioned principled. I totally agree. It's hard to imagine after the efforts he's made socially for the club to kind of do that. I mean, money does talk. And, if Jordan decides, like, he's currently getting paid £7 million a year, £140,000 a week, according to the outlets that report on these figures. If he's offered 5 times that, he's offered 35, 40 million pounds a year, and he's looking at that and he says, I mean, he already is probably set up for life with the money he's made in his career, as long as he's invested it wisely and he appears to have a good head on his shoulders. If he wants to do that and end his career making a lot of money, I think he's earned that right, but I just don't see it. I think I'm with you guys on that. I think he values, I don't call it an emotional aspect, but I think he just values that he's the captain of Liverpool. And that is something.
But we wouldn't begrudge him from leaving for that money.
Oh, yeah.
We wouldn't begrudge him if that's his choice. I think the problem is him being hounded out of the club. And I disagree with that.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's the problem for me. Him being hounded out or on Twitter and whatnot, that should stop.
So on the flip side, then, anyone can take this up. How much are you trying to keep him here? If he has his head turned a little bit and trying to keep that influence in the locker room, but you also have to factor in, you could get a good solid chunk of change. This is probably your last time you could cash in on him as a player. Is how hard, if you're Klopp, are you going to keep him here with that leadership aspect in mind, considering you could go sign somebody else? Kev, I'll let you jump in.
For the heartbeat, the soul, and what this club is being brought up on, there's never a better mirror image of what that is and who that player is than in Jordan Henderson. So that sums up the player that Jordan is to the club and to Jurgen Klopp. And it would take an absolute unbelievable offer that would never ever happen for him to even consider it, and even then there would be no consideration. He has the ethos of the club going back to instill from us from when Bill Shankly was alive and was our manager. He's instilled that and has brought that through, and it's mirrored in his performances at times. He's got us through his strength, his leadership, and giving it all for the club and leaving it on the pitch rather than in the locker room or in the dressing room, like a lot of people have done over the years. So that's what I mean. That's all I can say on that.
Yeah.
If people want to remember what Jordan's all about, just look for the picture of him and Klopp, or the video of him and Klopp embracing each other after we won the Champions League. you could tell both of them have been in deep conversation together. They absolutely trust each other, father, son, brother type relationship, that when it came to it, winning the biggest prize in football meant so much to both of them that they actually embraced. They essentially Klopp searched out for Jordan. That's how highly rated Jordan is by Klopp. My theory is that any type of head turning, a half-focused Jordan Henderson it would be an issue, because we need him to be the Jordan Henderson that we know and love in this club, and that's what we need. Any type of half turn, he feels that maybe you need to kind of think about his career. This is going to be the biggest challenge for Jordan, is that now he's come to the end of his career, come to a point in his career where he's not going to be playing as many games. He's not going to be getting the minutes that he thinks. So does he decide, okay, I accept where I am at Liverpool, or go back home to Sunderland, or I take the money? This is like the crossroads for Jordan and what he does for the rest of his life, essentially.
Indeed. I think, another great moment, kind of just the emotion. He's been here for some of the best years in the recent club's history. I mean, he's the captain. He's just led this team. I've seen some comments about going out on a high, because I feel like his performances are going to drop over the next few years. The best years are behind him. I totally disagree with that. I think this would be really a low to go out on. You just fell into fifth. You fell out of the Champions League. He's not going to start week in, week out in an ideal world, unless, knock on wood, Szoboszlai gets hurt. He's come in to replace Henderson in the 11. That's what we've been begging for basically almost 2-3 years now, where just move Henderson into a secondary role where he comes off the bench, starts every third match. That's fine. When he's not being overrun and he can really focus his energy in concerted moments, that's going to be a great presence. He still is going to be a good player, not just a good leader. I think he'll still be a good player if we limit those minutes. I feel like we're at a crossroads where the offer from Saudi Arabia is not going to be enough to turn his head, because, like you mentioned, Kev, like they're not going to offer the figure that I tossed out, that like you're paying him 5 times his wages, doubling his wages. I don't think that the money that would turn his head actually is going to be realistically offered, because also from Saudi Arabia's perspective, love Jordan Henderson. Is he like your big ticket seller under Steven Gerrard's side? A 33-year-old Jordan Henderson for £40 million a year. I mean, I don't think it doesn't make sense for many parties. I'd be surprised if it happened. One that I think could happen a lot more realistically is another Liverpool midfielder, Thiago. 1 year left on his contract. David Ornstein reporting that he rejected a formal offer from Saudi Arabia in recent weeks. Nothing sent to Liverpool, but only trying to sound out his interest. He's got a year left on his contract. This one is a really interesting one for me. Not more interesting than Henderson, but I think it's much more plausible. Much more plausible. Jay, I'll go to you first. For Thiago, could you see him going to Saudi Arabia? Would it make sense for him to go right now? Where do you kind of fall on his potential move to the Middle East?
I'm proper torn with this, mate. We've had a few chats about this in our chat off streaming this. Charlie made a boss point with it the other day, which logically you would go with what Charlie said. Not you, Charlie. It was Charlie Webb.
I thought that wasn't like me.
Like, what, I said something good? No. My heart says keep Thiago. He's one of the best technical players I've seen. Not even just for Liverpool, just in general. Like, sometimes when I'm watching him do stuff on a pitch, I gasp just off his touch and his vision, and he's a joy to watch, mate. He's the type of player that you're going to pay to watch play football. He's that good. But if you're looking at it with your head, he starts 15, 20 games a season. So, yeah, where I stand on it is, I'd sell him if we brought in 2 midfielders, which would be Lavia, Turam. If we don't bring both in, there's no way I'd get rid of him whatsoever. He's a winner. He's won nearly every season until he signed for us. And I think having him around young lads like Bajcetic, it'll do him the world of good in development. Just having him around, mate. And when he can play, he's still our best midfielder, don't forget. This season we can hopefully use him as a luxury, which is what he should have been. I think his injuries could have been caused a lot by the legs he's had to use in the last 2 seasons. That's not his game. He's even said himself that that's not my game. I don't run round. He likes to dictate play, dictate tempo, sit back, and make all the moves for everyone. So this is really the season he could probably shine the most, where we've got a midfield now where he can take that step. So no. If we don't get to see what I mean, mate, I can't give you an answer. I can't, because I love him. I really do love him as a player, mate. I love him. But I know in my head we've talked about keeping players that we shouldn't be keeping because we've been too loyal. It is the same thing, and you can't really make an exception just because you like him as a player.
Yeah.
So I've got splinters in my arse, mate. I'm not really saying either way. I don't know if we get 2 midfielders. Yeah. If not, no. I don't know, Jack, lad. I don't know.
It's a really nuanced situation. I mean, it's not as simple as, should he stay, should he go? It's, if he goes, it feels pretty weak as a midfield group. You can bring in a defensive mid, but it feels a little light. Like Curtis Jones is your backup left side at 8. It was great towards the back end of the year, but it feels like you're giving up a lot of talent. A lot of talent. I mean, his games in 2020 and in 2021 kind of just, I think about Everton away. I think that might have been his first appearance. I may be mistaken, but absurd games where you would just be watching him and you would just be
Chelsea away was his first one, wasn't it?
That was where he just passed more than the entire Chelsea team in that first game that he played. He was absurd. He is absurd, and I think I'll play devil's advocate because I know we all probably love Thiago, because how can you not love a player of his caliber? His injuries, Jay, a lot of times have come in training. And it's not a case of he's been playing, getting injuries in match. He's been hurt in matches, but sometimes it's been hip injury in training, calf injury in training. He'll miss this weekend's game. So it's not as simple as if McAllister starts and he's on the bench, he'll always be ready. Yeah, it's still inconsistent injury-wise, which is...
2 things. Go on, sorry, Jack. Lad.
No, go ahead.
I'd just say there's 2 things. I'd say the season we finished third with the Alisson header, that doesn't happen without Thiago.
Oh, yeah.
Does not happen. So we don't have that quad season without Thiago. The only other thing I'd say is when we're saying Jones has done well and that, he's done dead well, deserved to stay in the team last season for them last 10 games. Curtis Jones has wriggled with injuries.
Yeah.
All the time. So can you really afford to let Thiago go and not bring at least 2 in? Not at least 2 at max. You don't want any more than that. That'd be stupid. We're not Forest. But you can't really rely on Curtis Jones either, lad. In my opinion, I'm not having a go with Jones there, by the way. I said last season he deserved the spot. I was made up, he kept it. But how many weird injuries has he had, like his eye and stuff like that? And I know Thiago's injuries might not be during the game, but if you've legged it for 90 minutes and it's not your game, sure, you're still going to pick an injury up in training 2-3 days later when you're running and stuff. So I wouldn't put too much of it down to whether it's in the game or not. I think doing that side of his game that he's never been used to anyway, even in his pomp, he's not going to be doing it at 32, 31. He's ran more than he should be.
Definitely. It's really tough. You mentioned Curtis Jones as well. It feels like it makes sense for him to have one more year, Thiago, at the club, because then you imagine, hopefully, if Jones continues to develop, he can really ramp up into that role. But another year where he doesn't have to be thrown into the spotlight too soon. It feels, Kev, I'll go to you now. It feels like it makes sense in a lot of ways for him to stay another year. But like Jay mentioned, made a great point, the financial side of things. We've talked about keeping players past their expiration date. It feels like that is applying to Thiago right now. So if you get £20 million offered for him and you get your 3rd or 4th biggest wage earner off the books, that allows you to sign another midfielder. Let's assume that we're not handicapping ourselves, and we're doing what Jay would make the move with. And maybe it's Turam, maybe it's somebody else, but you're moving him on now. Where do you kind of fall on Thiago as a potential departure?
I totally agree with what Jay said, to be honest. For a player you only see 23% of in a 63 game season, he said, I'm astounded at the passing he has, and I'm sat there watching him, and I don't even see the pass, and I'm sat there, is unbelievable for me, and is depth of range of passing as well. Against low block teams, he has been an absolute absolute. I've enjoyed watching it minute by minute because he is that good. But that's me heart. My heart is saying that. My head is saying that. Again, I agree with Jay. You move Thiago on unless you're bringing two players in. You lose a lot of technical ability, especially against teams where we have a lot of possession against, and then you're relying on everyone else to then stepping up to the plate. Can they do that? It's in their locker, but it's nice to have a player in midfield who can pass a ball and range a ball that is as good as De Bruyne. And I'd like him to stay on for another season myself personally. I think next season is definitely the season where you'll probably see more game time from, because I think the engine and the legs that are going to be in that midfield is going to give them, as Jake. I might as well just copy and paste what Jake said. But basically, it does free him up, and it allows him to do what he's always wanted to do. And the reason why we bought him from Bayern Munich when he dictated that Champions League final, that's the kind of Thiago I'm hoping we could see next season and be dominant in those positions and provide us with that little bit of a little bit of special, special kind of dazzle that only Thiago can do. We've got another one who's on our books, Sobolosky, who we were talking about before. He's probably got, it's different. It's different with him. But with Thiago playing in that, honestly, I would like to see Thiago playing a number 8 or even in a number 10 role, and I think that could be possible next season, especially with the players that we're buying. So it's exciting at times to hear that we could be getting him. He could be staying on, but if he does go and we get our money back, then I agree with what Jake said. It has to be 2 players that comes in, because we need the quantity in there as well. For me,
it's a weird one, really weird one in a lot of ways. Charlie, I'll let you get your thoughts in on Thiago, because it really is head versus heart. Because we love him as a player because what he could bring, the potential of what he could bring. But then there's just the stone cold reality that he could open up other possibilities that might make more sense for the next 5 years rather than the next 6 to 12 months. Charlie, for you on Thiago.
Yeah, so where I was speaking quite passionately about Jordan and speaking from the heart, I'm very much speaking with my head when it comes to Thiago. I think if as much as great as he is technically and would be able to do great if he's fit and playing those odd games here and there, the money that we could get for him to be able to bring in that second midfielder that Jay's talking about on top of Lavia or Turam, whoever, if you've got those 2 players, that helps us for 75% of the season, for 85% of the season, where we're trying to get those points, where we're struggling to try to understand how we can fill a bench of quality players who could come in and do extra bits. So I'm quite placid on this kind of scenario. I would sell. I'll try to get as much money as possible as I can. It doesn't hold the kind of regard that I have for Hendo or some other players. Very much kind of, it's a missed opportunity for him. I don't think he's one of Klopp's favourites, like on a personality level. I've seen just a number of occasions where Klopp's having a bit of a go at Thiago. Thiago gives it the big thumbs up, which is really, really fantastic at doing throughout the game. But yeah, I think he gets on Klopp's nerves from when I've seen kind of interactions and odd looks here and there.
And we've touched on for Henderson, touched on the player side and the club side, what would be done on either way. We've talked about the club, what we do for Thiago. What about for the player? I'll toss it to you first, Charlie. If you're Thiago, what are you weighing up? What do you expect him to consider? Because it is obviously, what comes with a move to Saudi Arabia is a big payday.
Yeah.
And you're kind of moving out of the limelight. I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo has stayed in the Portugal squad, but I mean, you cannot apply the same logic to him. You mentioned the Euros being a factor in 2024. For you, Charlie, on Thiago's side, what do you anticipate him? Because he's got a year until he could walk, and theoretically, Saudi Arabia isn't going to go away in a year. A lot can happen in a year.
Yeah, I mean, he is a year older. He probably won't make the Euros. I think the pool in which the Spain squad could be chosen from is a lot bigger, and they need the reliance on players be able to coming in. I think the fact that he was just sparingly used in the last Euros or World Cup, whenever Spain last played, kind of proves the point that he's not. Is it Luis Enrique? Is he still the manager of Spain? I don't think he's
on
he's
PSG.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, maybe if there's a change at manager at the national level, that could change things. Who knows? There's lots of conversations that Thiago needs to have with his family, needs to have with the club, with Klopp, with other with his national team as well. Just try to understand where he sits, and if it isn't kind of going for where he wants to be, then take the money.
Kev, for you on the player side as well, I want to get your perspective on if you're advising Thiago, if you are Thiago, what are you doing?
Well, you got to be realistic when you're sitting down with them, and you're going to say, look, if you stay here, wherever you go, you're only going to play 25% of your game. So where do you want to play? Do you want to play here? Do you want to go back to Germany, which is not so stressful on your body? Go to a league where you can dominate the game the way you want to. It's not as 100 million miles an hour every week. The pressure on you, you may get a few more games out of you. Are you willing to accept and go there? Is Saudi an option for you? Do you want to set up for life? Because that's basically what you are going to be doing, because this will be the last call for you. Like, do you know what I mean? There's not going to be many offers, and the offers that are on the table from Saudi is probably going to be too tempting, and that's mainly because of the style of player he is, the technical ability that Thiago's got. That's what you're paying for. You're not paying for his body. You're paying for his actual what he'll bring to the team. And as Jay said before about him, that's what you're paying your money to come and watch. That kind of technical ability that very rarely do you get to see at live level. And I'm privileged to have actually sat and witnessed as many games as I have, and was there for that Porto goal where he scores that belter, which looks as though it just glitzes off the actual grass, but it doesn't actually. Honestly, to have and seeing him warm him up, the amount of times I've gone into the ground early just to watch him play. That's what the kind of that's the kind of thing that if I was his agent, I'd be looking at and going, mate, well, where do you want to go? He could choose go. He could theoretically go back to Spain if he wanted to. He could go to Germany, or I'd be saying you might as well just stay here for the season, because this looks exciting. You may not be playing in that number 6 and tackling back and putting the last tackle in. You could be playing further up the pitch in certain games. You know how we dominate the ball, especially at home, and we'll probably see it more next season away from home. I'm expecting you'll have more time and you'll be able to dictate it the way you are. So for me, I'll be leaving it to the player. The player, I don't think has got many. The fact that he's turned down Saudi already, whether he's playing games or not, that sends a message to me that he wants to stay at the club for me. Sorry, kind of went round the houses then.
last thing, I always thought Thiago's kind of very much a player that could play in America. Don't know why. I think he would just absolutely boss it over there, and he would love the lifestyle, and his family would be really, really happy. I think that's something for him.
Join Inter Miami, play with Messi. No state income tax. Make a lot of money, keep a lot of that money. Jay, for you on Thiago's side of things, what do you anticipate the player and his goals to be? Obviously, really tough to guess. The little bit of info we've got is he's rejected an offer. It could be because he's not interested, or maybe the amount of money isn't enough. What do you anticipate his decision tree to look like?
The thing about Thiago is there isn't another player in world football really that's like him. If you say he's like Thiago, who's like Thiago? There's no one. So,
Keita.
Fuck off, Kev.
I'm only winding you up, lad.
I was trying to keep it clean, lad, but there was nothing I could say there that was going to sugarcoat what I was thinking.
I saw
In
Kev
fact, that was
winding
the
up the
nicest thing I
mic.
could say.
Kev was just bringing the mic down. I was like, all right, what is Kev? I did not think there was gonna be anything positive. I was like, maybe like Pedri. Is he gonna have a like? What suggestion is Kev gonna make? And then it was just Naby Keita.
Me and Jack had a whole show on this.
Yeah, that just not to commandeer it. I'm sad about Keita. You know, like he didn't prove me right. You know, and he moved on to different pastures. I was gonna say greener pastures, but I don't think it's greener pastures. Anyways, Thiago.
He's a big factory. Yeah, if I'm Thiago, I'll be brutally honest. A lot of what Charlie said, I'd go to Saudi Arabia. I don't want him to, by the way. I'm saying if I'm Thiago, and the only reason being, I wouldn't normally as a player. I'd stay. I like my boy club and try and win as many proper trophies as I could in, proper European league. But he's won everything, and he's won everything multiple times. Like Charlie said, he's not going to get in that Spain squad anyway. So he's not playing for his international career. He's not going to play that many games with us probably because he's going to be luxury. If I'm him, I'm probably going to take the money, to be honest, because he's at that age now. He's 32. Even if he's done 6 months there, he's going to make a ridiculous amount of money. Only because it's him and because of what he's won. That's the only reason. If I was him, I'd do it because he's literally won about 10 leagues. I think he's won 3 Champions Leagues. International trophies. He's basically completed football. So if he wants a payday, in my eyes, he's earned it. So if I was him, I'd go, but I hope he doesn't think like me with greed.
I mean, this is a good point, though, from Kev O'Sullivan here about if you're giving guaranteed money over multiple years, injuries are a big problem. He could stay here for another year, but say it was a hip that was his problem, I believe, back in this season. If the hip continues to flare up, that's a really awkward injury. It's kind of like a back almost or an Achilles where it's just, it's less, I don't want to say less studied, but it's just there's less success stories, at least from my perspective. And it really is a dangerous injury to kind of play with long term. So if he's given guaranteed money over a couple of years at a good rate, good place, I could definitely see, Charlie, your point, in America. I think he would enjoy somewhere south of the country. Not quite sure where would be a great fit for him or who would really want to bring him in. But if he goes on a free in 2024 to America, I'd be happy that I get to see him over here on this side of things, hopefully with still some good matches left in him. So it's an interesting one for sure. We talked about just needing to sign 2 midfielders if he goes. Is there any world we see where he goes and only 1 midfielder is signed? Let's assume Lavia is brought in. Could we see Jay in the most FSG of FSG moves? Thiago goes for a good chunk of change, but there's not a great signing out there that fits our price model. And so you're down Thiago, only bringing in Lavia. Let's assume him as the option. Could you see that ever? Could you see that happen?
If you mean if we sell Thiago, no one come in, or if we sell him, just one come in?
Just one come in.
I could almost guarantee that. I could almost guarantee if we sell Thiago, we'll only bring one in. I know a lot of people think we're going to get Lavia and Turam. We won't. We'll get one. So if we do sell Thiago, yeah, we should definitely get 2. But
is that pessimism from just a lack of spending, or because we may bring in a center back too, or who can play at left back?
A bit of both, because we do need a centre half, and I'm going off track record, mate. FSG, it's not like I've just come up with this on a whim. FSG don't do this. We finished third because we didn't bring a centre half in. We messed up midfield and brought Nunes in rather than another midfielder because we were waiting. So I'm going off track record, and yeah, also there is the thing of a centre half as well. So no, I could almost put my life on it that if Thiago goes, it'll still only be 1 midfielder.
Yeah, and even if it's funny with FSG because I'm fine with them as owners personally. I know that if someone came in and was like, I have nice clean cash, there's no worries moral wise, we'll just spend a little bit more money. I'm like, all right, cool, like that sounds great. I'm not going to complain, but I always wait for the other shoe to drop with FSG. And even if we sign Turam, a left center back in Lavia, I'm like, all right, this was a nice window. We're not spending for the next half decade, at least, because that's what would end up happening. So
they carry pessimism, don't they, with them?
They do. And
they carry it with them. So even when they do good, you still think, yeah, but you're going to do this or you're going to do that.
You're just waiting for when it's going to reality is going to strike back in, which you give and you take, obviously. It's an interesting one with Thiago long term. I think the consensus though here, and I'm more or less in the chat, is that if he goes for a decent figure, it's a bummer. But I think if it makes sense for him and the club, that's something that I could see happening long term. Let's talk. I think maybe last topic. Not a huge one, but Ryan Gravenberch, not a target for Liverpool anymore. We're out of the race, according to Florian Plettenberg. Romeo Lavia is one of the priorities, according to Plettenberg. Surprise at all? I don't think this is a surprise, considering the signings we've made and just that Bayern are open to selling him. But I don't think. Is anybody here sad about that? I'm not.
No. I think the funny thing is that Bayern are interested in Turam, but not also this talk of Gravenberch not leaving. So, do they need to kind of sell to try to get Turam? Mm-hmm. Why would we help them by taking a lesser player? I'd probably say that Gravenberch is lesser of a player than Turam. I think he offers a lot more to us than what Gravenberch could do, possibly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So I think he just paid for it. To be fair, I just thought that we weren't interested weeks ago. It
always felt weird.
Come out.
Yeah,
it took me by surprise.
It always felt like a weird signing in a lot of ways. He didn't light it up in the Bundesliga. I don't see why they would sell him for a reasonable figure, though, considering the potential he has. He's still super young. And why would they sell him for 20, 30, 40 million right now when they could just keep him for a year, loan him for a year, and then double that money, or just have a great player in your squad? Because he's got great potential for sure, long term. But I just didn't really see that one happening. So, Kev, you seem like, are you the biggest Ryan Gravenberch fan club, and you're just absolutely devastated by this news?
I am. I'm gutted, mate. I've been crying for the last 2 weeks. Yeah, no, honestly, no. I think you've basically hit the nail on the head. I think the question mark for me is are you getting the player that left Ajax, or and the fact that he hasn't played that much for Bayern kind of tends to me that there's maybe a player at the crossroads of his career, because if you're not hitting it in Bayern's team, is that limited down to his injuries? Is that limited down to the players that are already there? Has he not reached the potential that Bayern bought him for, and are now thinking, well, you do have a high ceiling, but it's not working out? There's a lot of factors that come into play, and I think Liverpool don't want to. I think what may have changed it for them is that you bring in Gravenberch and you're basically doing 6, maybe 4 to 6 months before you actually start seeing him playing for the team and coming in and doing a job. And I think the players that we've brought in, I think, kind of makes you feel a little bit more happier that it doesn't even soften the blow, to be honest. And I think eventually I'd like to know where on the list he was on the list, because I think he may have been a bit further down. I think it might have been a bit of a let's just try our arm and see what happens, I think. But I'm not going to lose sleep over it, Jack. Let's put it that way.
Indeed. I don't think many should. Signings have been good. And I think they'll keep tabs on a lot of players, because at the right price, they could go for a lot of different guys. But I think I fully agree that didn't really make a ton of sense for a lot of reasons, especially now with the 8s that have been signed. We're going to go for about an hour here to wrap up the stream and the discussion. I'm interested in a bit more of an optimistic question, but who and when will the next signing be? It doesn't have to be in a specific player, but defensive mid, still before the preseason, next couple of days. Because there's been a lot of smoke around Lavia, but it seems like it's still a little bit of a ways away. I'm interested, Kev. I'll throw you under the bus with this one first. What you expect, of course. What profile, position do you expect to happen next, or even prefer to happen next? What should the next target be for Liverpool?
For me, I thought it was Turam that was going to be our next look. I think the problem you've got with Schumacher at the minute, which is great, is that he's all over the place and no one actually knows physically who or what we're doing. Because 1 minute we're getting told we're not in for Turam, next we're getting told we are. We're all in for Lavia now. We've stopped going for Turam. I don't think the journalists actually physically really know what's going on at the minute with Liverpool. I think they're trying to put one and one together. I think they're expecting that the next 2 weeks there is going to be another midfielder, and they're not too sure who that will be. And I think the Szoboszlai sign has caught them out, many of them out, and they're now trying to get back into the in the know kind of good books. I'll be honest, Jack, and I'm being perfectly honest. I don't know who our next signing's going to be, to be honest, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get either a left-sided centre back, because that is that's a position we're looking at. Do we go out and go, do you know what, bang, we'll do this? I can see someone leaving first before we may even go out and buy another player. But who that player is, the fact that you got everyone saying it's Lavia next, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Kone with a season loan. How much you know about it? You just don't know, and I know I'm probably sitting on the fence here with this, but it's probably the first time you've asked me a question, Jack, and I'm not answering it, so I apologise for that.
Hey, you're good. You've been answering them all stream, which is fair. And I mean, look, Szoboszlai came out of nowhere.
Exactly. And no one was onto it. So it's a good question to ask, Jack, and it's a fantastic question. But I'm just being honest, and I don't want to put my name on someone and it doesn't happen, because I can see a number of targets that we're looking at, and who on the list. The reason why I say a centre back, that might all of a sudden, yeah, we can do that. Bang, okay, bang, let's get it done. Curveballs, and we've seen it before. So for me, sorry, mate, I just don't know.
No, that is an answer in and of itself, because again, if you were putting money down a week ago, last Tuesday, who's the next signing? I think you're throwing a good chunk at Turam, and Szoboszlai is like 50-1, if that, odds. I mean, there's nobody's talking about him, and then it's done. So, I mean, Kev, you're not a mind reader. I'm not expecting you to predict the future about what's going to happen. Charlie, for you, I'll make it a bit easier than Kev. I wanted to make it hard for Kev for some reason, I guess. Positionally, what do you expect to happen next? Is it a defensive mid? Is it a center back? Do we go crazy and we're like, let's just buy another Darwin Nunez? Let's go look for a massive project up front and spend a lot of money. What do you anticipate is the next positional need, I guess, that Liverpool wants to address?
A right-footed left winger. That's what, because we've got so many of them now. Why we should add another one to the list? I really don't know. I got to be honest. Just like with Kev, I'm just going to sit on the fence. We just don't know. I think all the talk that we hear from the journalists, from Twitter, people supposedly in the know, they haven't got a clue. So we are hearing contradiction after contradiction after contradiction when it comes to Liverpool. It's pretty much flavour of the month at the moment, I'd say, for the journalists, because they're desperate for these clicks. So yeah, it's just that. That's all it is. I don't know. I think we will try to shore up the midfield, but maybe just like what Kev said, we might need to sell one person at least to facilitate an extra body coming in. Mm-hmm. Homegrown and non-homegrown kind of comes into factor as well, depending on who we go for.
Indeed. This would be the most stunning, Liverpool thing. Just Chiesa is just done. It's announced on Friday. That would be the, all right, that makes sense. Maybe the money's good. Jay, I'll make it an even easier question for you. What would you do as the next acquisition? I will double back. I'll let you guys get your thoughts in there, because this is clearly me just trying to ramp one last question, and I did not think it very well. Jay, what would you target next if you're Liverpool to try and really just make it done, ideally, before preseason starts?
You said easy question, lads. I didn't think that was, to be fair.
Oh, okay.
No, because we still really need a left-sided centre-back, but we still really need another midfielder, in my opinion. So they're both really important, to be honest.
Yeah. I would say then, if it helps at all, maybe it makes it more complicated, but what would be more beneficial? Which signing would benefit more from preseason, if that makes sense? So the one that you get first. Because in my opinion, I'll maybe help qualify your opinion as well. A left-sided center back doesn't need to hit the ground running as much as I think a midfielder might, at least in my opinion. So you could afford to wait a little bit longer for them, while you may want to bring in Lavia a bit earlier and then get him bedded in a bit earlier. That I think my next acquisition would be Lavia, personally for me. So I'm interested for you where you would go for next.
You can spin that though as well, Jack, because you've got to learn the high line.
True.
If you're a centre half and you've never played that high line before, you've got to fucking get that really, really quick. Do you know what I mean? So you can look at that either side, really, mate. I'm not saying you're wrong there, by the way. I'm just saying I think it's just as hard to adjust in a system like Klopp's because it's so complex. I don't think it really matters where you play. Robbo took ages to get in the team. Fabinho did. Diaz is the only one really who signed and went right in. And he was phenomenal. The best I've seen come into the team so fast and have an impact. I don't know who I'd sign first, to be honest, mate. I think we will sign a midfielder before a defender, purely because I don't think there's many defenders on the market. Left-sided centre-backs, I think there's very few and far between. Van der Veen looks like he's going to Spurs. Chelsea wants stupid money for Colwill. And Bastoni looks like he's signing a deal at Inter Milan. So then who's left? So I think that's one that's more likely to go to the end of the window. Midfield, we look like we've got a lot of plan B, C, D, E. So I assume the midfielder will be next, defender last, because I think that's the hardest position to fill.
That makes sense. Charlie, for you, I'll let you get your preference in, and then Kev, I will let you get your preference in as well. I made it tough for you. It's not an easy question. Not an easy question, obviously, but Charlie,
very, very quickly, the drop off from Konate and Virgil to Matip and Gomez worries me massively. So let's get that third centre back that can actually, that's a starter, come in. We shore up that defence, and then we can start concentrating and saying, right, what can we actually get out of this hot list of midfielders? Shore up the defence. I'm happy with that.
Makes sense. Kev, for you to round out the stream, the ideal signing that you're making or targeting next, if it's not a specific player.
It'll be midfield, but remember this: anytime you give respect for Independence Day, you just get done on the last question by Jack. But thanks. No, seriously, I agree with what the lads have said. Do you know what I mean? And they are right, and there's no and what you said as well. There's no right or wrong answer there. But with the amount of people we've got priority on the list for midfield, I'm thinking that. But I'm with Charlie as well, because I'd like to see someone in that centre back. He makes a great point about the shortfall you get when you lose the likes of a Van Dijk and a Konate. So I'll sit on the fence and say, either one of those two I'll be made up with.
You're allowed to sit on the fence. You wished Happy Independence Day. That's all allowed. For Kev, for Charlie, and Jay, it was a really fun stream here today. Make sure you like this stream, subscribe to the page. Look, we're making signings. Looks like there's going to be some more. We're going to keep the discussions rolling all summer long. Everybody, whether you are enjoying your Independence Day or just enjoying your Tuesday afternoon, evening, I hope you enjoy it wherever you are. I've been Jack Felshey, Transfer Room. We'll catch you next time in the next stream or video.